So to begin, maybe each of you could give an opening statement of just your just general thoughts about your intentions for this panel and why you are here, and in general why you do speak in public, what in general it is you're here to communicate about. Just maybe each of you could just take 5 minutes to give us a little opening.
So I have worked with thousands of people who have struggled with depression their whole life, and they have tried everything. They've tried medication. They've tried various forms of therapy. They've come to me and say, oh yeah, well my parents were depressed, so this is just inherited, and I guess I'm going to have to live with it. And it's not true. I have seen over and over again people who learn to love themselves. So much of depression comes from abandoning oneself, and I'll be getting into that a little bit more. But if you had like an actual child, and you're ignoring the child, you're judging the child, putting the child down, turning away when the child is upset, that child will likely get depressed. And that's what happens on the inner level. We abandon ourselves, and so of course we get depressed. And I'll never forget, one of my 5-day intensives, there were 4 women there who I didn't know were on antidepressants. One of them had been on for 20 years. I can't believe it. And at the last day, unbeknownst to each of them, all 4 of them, now I don't recommend this. I think when you go off, especially after you've been on a long time, you go off with a doctor. But all 4 of them said, I went off my antidepressants at the beginning of the intensive. I've had no side effects from going off of them, and I feel better than I've felt in years. I'm not going back on them because I now know why I was so depressed. I'm never going to be depressed again. And one of our facilitators, who now teaches inner bonding, she came to her first intensive very depressed. She was a therapist. She'd been through therapy school. She'd been through everything. And she was depressed. And within the first half hour of work, she said to me, oh my God, now I know why I've been depressed. I'm never going to be depressed again. And that's been true. That was 10 years ago. She's never been depressed again. So I know that inner bonding works miracles with depression.
I was a professor of psychology, clinical psychology at the University of Connecticut, and at the time, I had a private practice, and I was seeing clients, and some of them were very depressed. And back in those days, I had no reason to doubt the efficacy of antidepressants. I mean, everybody knew they worked, right? And I knew they worked. And so if I had a client who was very depressed, severely depressed, I had colleagues who were psychiatrists. I'm a psychologist, so I couldn't prescribe, but I had colleagues, and I'd refer the client to a psychiatric colleague to get an antidepressant and continue to do psychotherapy work, but that would hopefully take the edge off. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes the client would come back and they seemed to have been helped, and I assumed, okay, that's what everyone says, that's the antidepressant working, and that was a good thing to do. Until I started to do research and started looking at the drug trials. First at the published drug trials, and then I went to the FDA, and I used the Freedom of Information Act, and I got the data that hadn't been published. Data produced by the drug companies, sent to the FDA, but never published. And indeed, I found out, in these clinical trials, people getting antidepressants, many of them improved. And some of them improved quite a lot. But what surprised me was people also improved if they had been given placebo. These are placebo-controlled trials. And many of them improved a lot. And sometimes the improvement was lasting. And the difference between improvement on the drug and improvement on the placebo was minimal. Well, I have since done, I think, about 4 of these meta-analyses on the FDA data, on published data, on combinations of the FDA data and published data. Others, when I started reporting this, have said, oh, you can't be right, you must be wrong. And they've done their own meta-analysis, and you know what? Everybody gets the same results and the same outcome. The effects of antidepressants, the beneficial effects, are almost entirely, if not entirely, a placebo effect. But they are potent drugs that can have many, many harmful effects, side effects, health risks, and addiction for about a third of people who get on them. And so I wrote a book. I've been speaking all over the world. I continue to. And some people just hate me. But that's okay.
Well, I
I'm
love
doing what
you.
I think needs to be done.
I love you.
Thank you.
I'm a fan of Irving because I read his book when it came out, and I have told so many of my clients who say, "Oh, my doctor says get on antidepressants." I said, "You've got to read this book first," and then they never go on them. And so I'm so thrilled with that book.